The forbidden signal, the three sacred laws had governed galactic civilization for 50,000 years. Every child, regardless of species, learned them before they learned to speak their own name. Every government carved them into the foundations of their capitals. Every religion wove them into the fabric of their most holy texts. The first law was simple, absolute, and never questioned. Never seek the silent worlds. Captain Zix. Morvain had spent her entire career breaking rules that others considered unbreakable. As the Keltharian Empire's most notorious archaeologist, she had uncovered the lost tombs of the Vorthok dynasty, mapped the quantum ruins of the ethereal cities, and decoded languages that had been dead for millennia. But even she had never dared to violate the first law until now. "Captain, the energy readings are impossible," whispered her navigation officer, tentacles trembling as they manipulated the sensor array. "The system appears completely dead, but our instruments are detecting power signatures that exceed our entire fleet's output." Zix stared at the viewport of her research vessel, the Curiosity's edge. Before them hung Kepler 442, the nearest of the 7 silent world star systems that every galactic chart marked with the universal symbol for forbidden territory. The system looked exactly as the old surveys described, a dying red dwarf surrounded by barren rocks. No life, no atmosphere, no reason anyone would ever want to visit. "Run a deep scan," Zix ordered, her 4 eyes gleaming with the familiar thrill of discovery. "I want to know what's really out there." The scan results made no sense. The third planet, a seemingly dead ball of rock, showed massive underground structures that shouldn't exist. Geometric patterns too perfect to be natural, too vast to be believed. And at the center of it all, 7 concentrated energy signatures pulsing in perfect synchronization, like the heartbeat of something unimaginably large. Captain, her communications officer, a young Zelthian named Crix, looked up from his console with wide, frightened eyes. "I've been analyzing the quantum resonance patterns. They match theoretical models from the restricted archives. The ones about ... about the architects." The bridge fell silent. The architects were legend, the mythical first civilization that had supposedly shaped the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. Most scholars believed they were purely fictional, stories created to explain the impossible ruins and technologies that predated known history. "Set course for the 3rd planet," Zix commanded. "Captain, the first law," began her first officer. "The first law says never to seek the silent worlds," Zix interrupted. "But we haven't been seeking them. We've found them. Now we need to understand why they were hidden." The descent to the planet's surface revealed wonders and horrors in equal measure. The underground structures weren't just massive, they were impossible. Tunnels that curved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, chambers that were larger inside than outside, walls made of materials that their senses couldn't even classify. And everywhere, the gentle, rhythmic pulsing of those 7 energy signatures. Following the strongest signal, Zix's team descended deeper into the facility than any sapient being had ventured in 50 millennia. The architecture grew more sophisticated. The deeper they went, until they reached a vast chamber that defied description. The ceilings stretched up beyond the reach of their lights, and the walls curved away into infinity. In the center of the chamber stood 7 towering cylinders, each one 100 meters tall and made of a crystalline material that seemed to bend light around itself. "Stasis chambers," breathed Dr. Velk, the team's xenobiologist. "But the technology, it's at least 1,000,000 years beyond anything we understand." As they approached the first cylinder, symbols began to appear on its surface, flowing. Elegant script that somehow made itself understood regardless of the reader's species or language. Zix found herself reading words in perfect Keltharian, though she knew they weren't originally written in her language. Here lies the hope of tomorrow, sleeping until tomorrow proves itself worthy of hope. Captain Crix's voice was barely a whisper. The life signs, they're not just present, they single quotes perfect, whatever's in there, it's not just alive, it's dreaming. Zix reached toward the chamber's control panel, a simple interface that had remained dark for 50,000 years. The moment her hand touched the crystalline surface, the entire facility came alive. Light flowed through the walls like liquid starfire, and the gentle pulsing became a symphony of harmonized energy. The first cylinder began to open with a sound like the universe taking its first breath. Mist poured out, carrying with it an impossible fragrance, the scent of every flower that had ever bloomed, every rain that had ever fallen, every moment of perfect peace in the history of the galaxy. The being that emerged was unlike anything in the galactic catalogue of species, yet somehow familiar. Bipedal, roughly humanoid in proportions, but with an elegance and presence that made everyone in the chamber instinctively step back. Its skin was pale but seemed to contain constellations beneath the surface, and its eyes when they opened held the depth of space itself. The being stretched as if waking from a pleasant nap, then looked directly at Zix with an expression of mild curiosity. "How long?" it asked, in a voice that somehow reached each team member in their own language. The question was simple, but it carried the weight of eons. I don't understand," Zix managed. The being's expression shifted too, something that might have been amusement. "How long have we slept? Time flows differently in stasis, but the stellar positions." It paused, and for a moment, something profound and sad passed across its features. 50,000 years. We were promised 1,000. With casual gestures that defied physics, the being reached out and touched the air. Reality rippled around its fingers, and suddenly Zix could understand the facility's purpose, could see the true scope of what lay sleeping in the remaining chambers. Not 7 beings, 7,000, 7 million. An entire civilization that had voluntarily entered stasis, leaving behind only legends and laws designed to keep them undisturbed. "What have you become?" the being asked, and this time the question was directed at all of them, at their entire civilization. With another gesture, it was no longer a question but a query, reaching out through quantum fields and psychic frequencies, touching every conscious mind in the galaxy simultaneously. The response was immediate and catastrophic. On 1,000 worlds, in 10,000 space stations, among countless species, every sapient being received the same vision. They saw what the galaxy had been like before, when these beings, humans, they called themselves, had walked among the stars. They had been shapers of reality, gardeners of possibility, beings whose very existence had elevated everything around them but also overshadowed it completely. The visions showed why they had agreed to sleep. Not from defeat, not from exile, but from love. They had realized that their presence, no matter how benevolent, prevented other species from reaching their full potential. So they had made the ultimate sacrifice, trusting that the galaxy would grow in their absence, that they could wake to a universe of equals rather than subjects. Back in the chamber, the other 6 cylinders were beginning to open automatically, responding to their leader's awakening. Each new human brought with them their own impossible presence, their own casual mastery over forces that the current galactic civilization barely comprehended. "We were betrayed," said the first human, though there was no anger in the statement. Our agreement was for 1,000 years, long enough for your species to mature, to find your own paths among the stars. Instead, you've had 50,000 years of our absence, and yet, the human gestured, and suddenly every member of Zix's team could see the galaxy as it truly was. Not the diverse, thriving civilization they believed themselves part of, but a collection of species that had grown comfortable in safety, that had built their societies on the foundation of humanity's absence, without ever truly understanding what they had inherited. What happens now? Zix asked, though she suspected she already knew. The human smile was neither cruel nor kind, it was inevitable. Now you face the great examination. We sleep no more, Captain Morvain. Your species must prove they have become worthy of the galaxy they inherited. Some will pass, some will not. Around them, the facility continued to awaken, 50,000 years of accumulated potential beginning to unfold. And across the galaxy, an age of comfortable certainty was coming to an end. The humans were awake, and they had questions that demanded answers. Asterisk. The reckoning tied the emergency. Assembly of the Galactic Concord had been called exactly once in recorded history, when the plague ships of the Void Wraiths had threatened all organic life. Now, for only the second time in 50,000 years, representatives from every major civilization gathered in the great amphitheater orbiting Sanctuary Prime. Grand Chancellor Vex of the Aquarian Federation called the assembly to order with trembling tentacles. Fellow sapients, his translated voice echoed through the chamber. We face a crisis beyond our comprehension. The humans are awake. A ripple of terror and confusion swept through the assembled delegates. Many species had no record of humans in their modern archives. Others remembered them only as myths, cautionary tales, or the mysterious architects of galactic legend. But every being present had felt that moment of awakening, that impossible vision that had revealed truths their civilizations had forgotten or chosen to ignore. What are our options? Demanded Fleet Admiral Orcs of the Draconian Empire, her scaled fists clenched. Can we fight them? The response came from the most unexpected source, Elder Nyx of the Preservation Order. Beings so old, they remembered the time before the first law. You cannot fight the wind, child, she whispered in a voice like autumn leaves. You cannot wage war against the foundation upon which your house stands. We know what they are capable of, because we were there when they chose to sleep. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Preservation Order had always claimed to be the galaxy's living memory, but few had believed they were truly that ancient. Tell us, Chancellor Vex commanded. Tell us what we face. Elder Nyx's ancient form shifted, and suddenly the chamber filled with images, not projections, but memories made manifest. The assembly watched in awe and horror as the true history of the galaxy unfolded before them. They saw humanity at its height, beings who had mastered not just technology, but reality itself. Humans who could reshape matter with thought, travel between dimensions as easily as walking through a door, create new forms of life as casually as others might paint a picture. But more than their power, the assembly saw their restraint. Humans who could have conquered everything, but instead chose to guide, to teach, to nurture other species toward their own greatness. They were not our rulers, Elder Nyx explained as the visions continued. They were our gardeners. Every species you see today, every civilization you know, reached the stars because humans helped them find their way. But double quotes, the images shifted. showing a galaxy where other species had grown dependent on human guidance, where natural evolution had been replaced by careful cultivation, young civilizations that never struggled because humans smoothed every path, ancient species that had stagnated because humans could solve any problem better than they could. They realized that their very presence was limiting you, Elder Nyx continued. So they made the greatest sacrifice in galactic history. They agreed to enter voluntary stasis for 1,000 years, long enough for your species to mature independently. The first law was created to ensure they would not be disturbed. But they've been asleep for 50,000 years, protested Director Thane of the Terran Colonial Union. Why? Elder Nyx's expression grew sorrowful. Because we were cowards. Because we grew comfortable with their absence. Because we convinced ourselves that our prosperity was our own achievement, not the gift of beings who had stepped aside for our benefit. On the world that had once been called Earth, Dr. Alina Vasquez stood in what had once been her office at the Human Colonial Affairs Department. The building had been perfectly preserved by stasis fields, frozen at the moment of humanity's last decision. Through the window, she could see New Geneva as it had been 50,000 years ago, a city of impossible beauty, where humans had lived in harmony with representatives from 100 different species. Now the city was empty except for the slowly awakening human population. The other species had long since forgotten this place existed. The reports are coming in, said Marcus Chen, her former deputy director and now her closest advisor in this strange new age. 7,347 humans have awakened so far. The response from the galactic community is mixed. Alina nodded, unsurprised. Through the quantum consciousness network that connected all awakened humans, she had already felt the fear, confusion, and desperate hope radiating from across the galaxy. What about the test results? Preliminary data suggests significant variation in societal development. Marcus replied, consulting a tablet that interfaced directly with his enhanced neural implants. Some species have genuinely evolved beyond our expectations. Others, have regressed. Alina finished. Show me. The holographic display that materialized showed a galaxy map marked with different colored indicators. Green sectors showed species that had exceeded human expectations, civilizations that had achieved true wisdom, sustainable development, and genuine cooperation. Yellow sectors indicated species that had maintained basic ethical standards but failed to reach their potential. Red sectors. The hegemony of Crocs enslaved 17 species and strip-mined 43 systems, Marcus reported grimly. The Vorthan Empire has committed 3 separate genocides. The corporate collective has turned entire populations into economic resources. Elena's jaw tightened. When humanity had entered stasis, these species had been young but promising civilizations. To see what they had become in humanity's absence was both heartbreaking and infuriating. And the others? The Keltharian Empire has become a genuine democracy spanning 800 worlds. Marcus continued, his tone brightening. The Aquarian Federation has achieved perfect environmental harmony across all their systems. The Zelthian Commune has developed forms of art and philosophy that even we find inspiring. Some of our children truly did grow up. Alina felt a complex mix of pride and sorrow. Begin the examinations, standard protocols, but adapted for current development levels. Let's see which of our children have truly earned their inheritance. The great examination was not what any species expected. There were no fleets of ships, no ultimatums, no displays of overwhelming force. Instead, Each civilization received visits from individual humans who presented them with scenarios, ethical dilemmas, resource allocation problems, first contact situations, environmental crises, to the draconian empire. Humans presented a scenario where their military might could solve a galactic crisis, but only through methods that violated their own stated principles. The Draconians chose honor over convenience. Passing their first test to the corporate collective, humans offered economic opportunities that could increase their profits by orders of magnitude, but would require the exploitation of developing species. The collective took the deal without hesitation, failing catastrophic ally to the Zelthian commune. Humans presented an artwork of impossible beauty that could only be preserved by destroying something equally beautiful created by another species. The Zelthians spent months in debate before declining to make the choice, arguing that beauty destroyed to preserve beauty was no longer beautiful. Their wisdom exceeded even human expectations. Some examinations revealed hidden depths. The Federation, known for their peaceful nature, showed they were prepared to sacrifice themselves to protect other species. The militaristic Corvan Republic demonstrated they had developed beyond their warlike origins, using their strength to protect rather than conquer. Others revealed hidden shallowness. Species that claimed to value knowledge refused to help others learn. Civilizations that preached unity practiced exclusion. Governments that promised freedom delivered only the illusion of choice. Captain Zix, Morvain, found herself in the unprecedented position of serving as the first official ambassador between the Keltharian Empire and awakened humanity. She stood in the reconstructed council chambers of New Geneva, facing a tribunal that included Dr. Alina Vasquez herself. "Your species shows great promise," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice carrying the weight of eons. "You've built a true democracy, eliminated poverty and disease, and maintained peaceful relations with your neighbors. But there's something we need to understand." The human leader gestured, and suddenly Zix could see herself as the humans saw her, not just her current self, but her potential, her species' potential, the paths that had led to this moment, and the paths that stretched ahead. "You broke the first law," Dr. Vasquez continued. "Not from malice, not from greed, but from curiosity, from the need to understand. That tells us something important about who you've become." Zix felt a moment of fear. Had her actions doomed her entire species? "It tells us," Dr. Vasquez said with a small smile, "that you're ready to be partners rather than children." The new compact was signed on humanity's homeworld 1 year after the Great Awakening. Representatives from 37 species gathered to establish a new galactic order, not one dominated by humanity, but one where humans served as guides and teachers for those ready to learn. Not every species chose to participate. The corporate collective withdrew from known space, seeking distant galaxies where their exploitative practices might be tolerated. The hegemony of Crocs dissolved in civil war when their enslaved populations, inspired by human examples, rose in rebellion. Several other species simply chose isolation, preferring the familiar limitations of their current existence to the challenges of growth. But those who remained, those who had passed the great examination, found themselves part of something unprecedented. Galactic civilization where each species contributed their unique strengths, while learning from the accumulated wisdom of humanity's long experience among the stars. Dr. Alina Vasquez stood once again at her office window, but now the view showed a very different New Geneva. The city bustled with life, again not just human life, but beings from dozens of species who had come to learn, to teach, and to build something greater than any single civilization could achieve alone. Was it worth it? Marcus asked, joining her at the window. 50,000 years of sleep. Alina watched a group of young beings from different species work together on some project in the plaza below. Their different forms of intelligence and perception combining to solve problems none could handle alone. It was the future humanity had dreamed of when they first chose to step aside. "Ask me in another 1,000 years," she said. "But I think..." Yes, I think they were worth the wait. In the distance, ships launched toward the stars, not human ships leading the way, but mixed crews of species working together as equals, carrying the new compact to every corner of the galaxy. The age of human dominance was over. The age of true cooperation had just begun, and in the deepest archives of New Geneva, the records of the Great Examination were carefully stored, along with instructions for the next tester, one that would come when this generation of species had matured enough to face challenges that even awakened humanity couldn't handle alone. The galaxy was growing up, and humanity, finally, was no longer alone.